flying the mission. And
what was your regular cruising speed if you were amping up? Like, so the maximum was 3.3.
We would cruise at a couple of different speeds. Generally, we'd cruise in non-really hostile environments at Mach 3, and then when they say accelerate, we'd accelerate to 3.15. On missions where we were cruising at 3.15, and then we'd accelerate to 3.2. If we really felt scared, we could accelerate out to 3.3. But then you're getting closer to the edge now. You're going to do more harm to yourself than anybody else is. So try not to do that.
Oh. And what's it capable of doing?
3.3 is what they say.
Yeah.
It was when Kelly Johnson, the lead engineer on this, said that if he could figure out a way to cool the engines, to inject water in there, that this airplane had no limit. But we had a limit of let me see if I can remember. Limit of 417 degrees compressor inlet temperature, CIT, inlet temperature. Now there were days when you would fly in the Barents Sea when the compressor inlet temperature, so cold up there, would be like 380. And the airplane, and this was scary. Somebody asked me what was scary. This was scary for a pilot because an airplane is supposed to be at a certain altitude for the weight it has on board and the speed you're going. Just kind of, that's the altitude it wants to fly at. Sometimes we could be 8,000 feet above the altitude we're supposed to be at because the air was so cold and the airplane just wants to accelerate. You couldn't let it accelerate. And if you're at minimum afterburner, you can't take an engine out of afterburner because it'll come down then. So you can't. You have no alternative but to let it cruise climb. So you end up about 8,000 feet above where you want to be for the fuel you have on board. Then you have a 40-degree turn coming up. And if you know much about flying, when you roll into a 40-degree turn and you cut the lift that much, and you're way too heavy, the airplane tends to slice, and that's not good. So we always had to watch out for things like that. So you were always planning in the SR. Somebody asked me about emergency fields. All the other airplanes I flew, if you had an emergency, you would look. When you did your pre-flight mission planning the day before or that morning, you knew that you had emergency bases all around you. In the SR71, your emergency bases were 300 miles away. So you didn't care what was around you. You needed something 300 miles or 250 miles away. And that was a little hard to get used to think that way. Because if you had someplace and you had to land there, and you had an emergency right overhead, and you started to descend here from Mach 3 and got down and then started your turn, you would have gone so far that way at Mach while you were decelerating that once you got decelerated and coming back at 0.9 Mach, it would take you all day to get back. It just didn't work. So you had to change that thought process.
Did you work with the designers at all?
Yeah, I didn't work closely, but I was so lucky. I did get to meet and actually talk with Kelly Johnson, who was the lead designer, and Ben Rich, who was his right-hand man who developed the inlets. And then Ben took over the Skunk Works after Kelly died. Yeah, I actually have a picture in my basement when I left the program, signed by Kelly Johnson and Ben Rich. I'm thinking big eBay thing, right?
You ever get in trouble on the internet?
I'd never give it that. I'd give it to my kids, but I'm sure they wouldn't want it. But no, we didn't. But I'll tell you, Kelly Johnson was an interesting man because the SR71 was his baby. And we as pilots, he would come and meet us. We'd get a talk to him. The Air Force would select us and all that, but he would meet us. And it would be no question that we were not to mess up his airplane. No question at all. We're not to mess up. And if we had an emergency to land away, the Air Force would always send their blue suit maintenance out after you with airplanes and mechanics and all that. And civilian technical reps, tech reps that were out there and all. Kelly would always send Lockheed engineers up to make sure that everything was okay and that we were taking good care of his airplane when we do that. He was very serious that way.
What happened to the planes that you lost?
Most of the planes, all the planes I lost, none were ever shot down, none were lost due to any enemy action. They were all lost due to just normal aircraft losses, pilot losses. The SR, when it was new, in the A-12 before it, I was explaining to a group earlier, see this area here? It's called a chine, C-H-I-N-E, and if you look at it dead on, it doesn't look unlike those cigar boats that go so fast on the water. You know, cigar boats that race on the lakes? Looks like that because you see them just skimming along the water. Well, we would skim along the thin air at 80,000 feet, just like that. That chine area would give us about 35% lifting body to keep the airplane up there in that thin air. So that would help in that way. Also, the chine all through here would allow places to put the sensors, put the cameras and all, to get the cameras in there. That's the good news. The bad news is the chine area and the way the SR flew, the SR had absolutely no stall characteristics. Most airplanes, when you fly them, have stall characteristics. So you'll get in an airplane, if you're going too slow or you increase your angle of attack too much, you'll see to your pants, you'll get that buffeting, you can feel it. Airplanes tend to talk to you. They tend to talk to you. The SR71 doesn't talk to you. The SR71 would just depart normal flight. If you flew it to an angle of attack too high or airspeed too slow, and it would depart normal flight. And what that means is it would just flip over. And when it flipped over, it was lost. You couldn't flip it back, it was just lost. It became an oak leaf at that point, it would just come down. So you had to get out of it, yeah. So most of the early losses were all subsonic, just pilots coming off a tanker, just not knowing what the airplane was going to do, and trying to get over a thunderstorm like they could do in their F4, their F101, or some other airplane. But in this airplane, you can't do that. They'd almost get to the top of the thunderstorm and boom, gone. A couple of them came apart at midair at altitude. They had catastrophic failures. There were ejections at 80,000 feet and above, and ejections at well over Mach 3, and all the Air Force pilots survived. A couple of the test pilots in the early days did not survive, and test backseaters did not survive.
You can eject at Mach 3?
Oh yeah, you're in a full pressure suit. You're in a seat. You're not in a capsule, you're in a seat, so you're right there in the air. But keep in mind, when you're at that altitude, the air's thinner, so you're not going as fast. You know, you're not going as fast as you are down here. It's all relative as you go up.
Was there a different feeling flying this aircraft? Because there's no sense of speed. You don't have any sense of speed.
Oh, total different feeling.
It is?
This airplane had no feeling.
Yeah.
No sense of feeling. But when I was flying F4s, you're always flying the airplane or T-38s. You feel the G's, you're making high-speed turns, you're going up and coming down. This is a 1G airplane, which means you're standing at 1G right now. 1 gravity, I mean, that's what you're standing at.
No acceleration.
We're all at 1G, yeah. This is 1G. So when they say somebody did a loop and pulled 6 Gs, that means that you're pulling 6 times what you're doing right now. So this airplane was basically a 1G airplane to fly. So it always felt like this. Once in a while you'd pull 1.5 Gs, but that's not a lot of Gs. So it was not a high G airplane. So you didn't feel a lot of that. Yeah, you didn't in this airplane. You had other sensations, but none like that. There was no sensation of speed. No sensation of speed other than your instrumentation. You could see the instruments moving, so you knew you were going fast.
Yeah.
But no, you didn't see any other airplanes up there, so you wouldn't have to pass anybody.
Was it fun?
Oh yeah.
Was it?
It was great fun, yeah. I mean, well, the missions made it fun. What you were doing made it fun.
Yeah.
You were, doing all kind of fun Cold War missions. You were flying Cold War missions against the Soviets, the Chinese, the Vietnamese, the North Koreans, the Cubans, and all that. It was fun. Flying against the Nicaraguans. I'm not sure what we did down there, but we were doing something against the Nicaraguans.
But we knew what they were doing.
Well, I didn't, because nobody ever showed me the film, but I guess we did. But we had all kinds of missions we were flying. Yeah.
When were you flying?
I left Beale in July of 1980. Then I went back again from 85 to 87, where I was a squadron commander. I didn't fly the jet then. We only had because of the expense to fly the airplane and all, only crew members flew the airplane. And we were dual qualified in T-38, which was another jet, which was less expensive to fly. So for training, we would fly, I would fly 2 or 3 T-38 flights a week, and I would fly 2 or 3 training SR flights a month. Now I got to be an instructor pilot, so when I was an instructor pilot, I got to fly more. And when we deployed more. But we tried to keep the SR flying to a minimum of what's possible, because it was more expensive to fly. You had to launch tankers and refueling and all those things. How to launch? Just took off the runway. Just taxied out and took off.
Okay. So there wasn't additional, it's just a launch tanker. So
Oh no, we would.
the tankers up.
KC-135 would take off before us. They'd go to the refueling track. We would take off, go to 25,000 feet. Usually go to the tanker, refuel. 25,000 feet, then the tanker would do something. We'd fly a mission, then come back. Maybe the tanker would be there again for a second refueling.